The parable of the prodigal son is one of the most famous stories Jesus ever told. A younger son runs away, wastes everything, hits the bottom, comes home, and is welcomed by his father. Most people hear the story and think the main point is obvious. No matter how far you run, you can come back. And that is true. But it is not the whole story. Jesus told this parable because the Pharisees and scribes were complaining. They saw tax collectors and sinners drawing near to Jesus, and they said, "This man receives sinners and eats with them." That is the tension behind the story. Jesus is not only explaining the repentance of a lost son, he is revealing the heart of the Father toward the lost, and exposing the heart of those who resent mercy. The younger son is lost in the far country, but the older brother is lost near the house. One breaks the rules and runs away. The other keeps the rules and stays outside the celebration. One is covered in shame. The other is covered in self-righteousness. And the father goes out to both. So this parable is not only about a rebellious son who came home. It is about a father who runs, restores, and rejoices. It is about grace that offends religious pride. And it asks a question deeper than whether sinners can be welcomed home. Do you share the Father's joy when mercy receives the lost? The younger son begins by asking for what should not yet be his. He says, in effect, "Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me." In that culture, the request is not just impatient, it is a rejection of the Father. He wants the Father's gifts without the Father's presence. He wants the inheritance without the relationship. He wants freedom, but his idea of freedom is life away from the one who gave him everything. The Father gives him what he asks for, and the Son gathers everything and leaves for a far country. That phrase matters. The far country is not only a place on a map. It is the picture of life lived away from the Father's house, away from the Father's care, away from the Father's joy. At first, it probably feels like freedom. No restraint, no responsibility, no one telling him who he is. But the freedom he chooses begins to empty him. He spends everything, and then famine comes. The life that promised abundance leaves him hungry. This is how sin often works. It does not begin by showing the famine. It begins by promising independence. It tells the heart, you will be more alive away from the Father. You can define yourself. You can take the gifts and leave the giver. But sin always spends more than it gives. The son who wanted control becomes helpless. The son who wanted pleasure becomes empty. The son who left as if he were rich ends up longing to eat what the pigs eat. Then Jesus says the son came to himself. That is not the same as saving himself. It is the moment when the illusion breaks. He remembers his Father's house. He knows he has sinned. He prepares a confession. He does not come home demanding rights. He comes home with no claim except mercy. The younger son teaches us that repentance begins when the far country stops looking like freedom and starts looking like hunger. But the shock of the parable is not only that the son returns. The greater shock is what the Father does when he sees him coming. The Father sees him while he is still a long way off. That detail changes the whole scene. The Son has prepared a speech, but the Father has already been watching the road. Before the Son can reach the house, before he can prove anything, before he can work his way back into favor, the Father is moved with compassion. He runs to him, embraces him, and kisses him. In the story Jesus tells, Mercy does not wait coldly at a distance. Mercy moves first. The Son begins his confession. "Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." That part is true. He has sinned. He has dishonored the Father. He has wasted the inheritance. He does not come home with excuses. But before he can finish by asking to become a hired servant, the Father interrupts the speech with restoration. "Bring the best robe, put a ring on his hand, put shoes on his feet, kill the fattened calf. Let us eat and celebrate." Each detail matters. The robe covers shame. The ring signals restored sonship. The shoes show he is not being received as a slave. The feast announces joy. The Father does not deny the Son's sin, but he refuses to let sin have the final word over the Son's return. Repentance is real, but restoration is greater than the Son expected. He came hoping for a servant's place. The Father welcomed him as a son. This is the heart of the parable. Jesus is answering the complaint that he receives sinners and eats with them. The Father's celebration shows why heaven rejoices over the lost who are found. God's mercy is not reluctant. He is not embarrassed to welcome repentant sinners. He does not make them earn their way back into sonship one step at a time. Grace runs, embraces, covers, restores, and rejoices. The younger son thought distance from the Father would make him free, but true life was found in being received by the Father again. The far country ended in hunger. The Father's house opened with a feast. But the older brother is the part of the story that many people forget, but he is the reason the parable cuts so deeply. Jesus told this story to people who were offended that sinners were coming near to him. So the older brother is not an extra character added at the end. He represents the person who is close to the Father's house, but far from the Father's heart. When the older brother hears music and dancing, he does not enter the celebration. He asks what is happening, and when he learns that his younger brother has returned, he becomes angry and refuses to go in. The father has recovered a lost son, but the older brother cannot rejoice. He sees the feast not as mercy, but as unfairness. He does not say, "My brother has come home." He says, "This son of yours." His words expose his heart. He says, "Look, these many years I have served you, and I never disobeyed your command." He speaks like a servant keeping account, not like a son enjoying his father. He has stayed home, but he has not understood grace. He has obeyed, but his obedience has become a way to demand control. He believes his faithfulness should give him the right to resent mercy shown to someone else. This is why the older brother is so dangerous. His lostness is harder to see than the younger son's. The younger son is visibly broken in the far country. The older brother looks respectable, responsible, and obedient. But when the Father shows grace, his heart is revealed. He does not love the Father's joy. He wants reward more than relationship, and justice for his brother more than restoration. And still, the Father comes out to him. That is mercy too. The Father does not only run to the rebellious son, he also goes out to the angry son standing outside the feast. The parable leaves the older brother at the door because Jesus is asking the Pharisees and scribes where they will stand. Will they enter the joy of the Father or remain outside because grace welcomed the lost? The parable ends without telling us whether the older brother went in. That silence is not accidental. Jesus leaves the question open because the Pharisees and scribes are standing in the older brother's place. They have heard the music of mercy. They have seen sinners coming near to Jesus. Now they must decide whether they will rejoice with the Father or remain outside, angry that grace has welcomed the lost. So the prodigal son is not only about the younger son's return, it is about the Father's heart. The Father runs to the ashamed sinner in the road, and he goes out to the resentful son in the field. He moves toward open rebellion, and he moves toward hidden self-righteousness. Both sons need mercy. One is lost in his sin, the other is lost in his pride. But the Father's desire is that both would come home. This is why the parable points us to the gospel. Jesus receives sinners because that is the heart of God. He does not excuse sin, but he welcomes repentance. He does not ignore shame, but he covers it with grace. He does not celebrate rebellion, but he rejoices when the lost are found. And he also exposes the religious heart that resents mercy because it has never understood the Father's joy. The question this story asks is not only, can the prodigal come home? The answer is yes. The deeper question is, will the older brother enter the feast? Will the religiously confident rejoice when mercy restores someone who does not deserve it? Will the heart that has kept score receive grace as gift? Jesus is showing us the Father. In him, the lost are sought, the ashamed are welcomed, the self-righteous are invited, and the house is filled with joy, because what was dead is alive again, and what was lost is found.